Alright, good morning everybody. Welcome to This Week in RuneScape for the 4th of March. Today is going to be a little bit of a longer one because we have a lot of combat changes. So grab your cup of coffee and let's get ready to read. Alright, for the 4th of March we have the combat update and Thok smashing buff this week in RuneScape for the game updates. Alright, our combat changes hit the live game today, and Thok has provided some generous buffs to celebrate. As we go down, we have the March combat update. Combat has always been one of core activities in RuneScape. It touches the multiple facets of the game, from bossing to slayer to questing and all other challenges in between. With the release of the 4th combat style, which is necromancy, they've been tweaking functions throughout the game, and now those tweaks have been cooked up in the beta for the last few months, and they're ready to be delivered today. A general summary of some of the major changes. They made combat more fluid, clearer tooltips, labels, and descriptions, overhaul of accuracy so it impacts damage rather than chance to hit, and improvements to critical strike and damage ranges of abilities so that they're more consistently in your control and less mercy to the RNG. Here they have a YouTube video of them explaining all the combat updates. I think they also did a live thing on Twitch as well, going over them. But continuing on, we have Thok's smashing buffs. Alright, with the launch of the combat updates, Thok himself, the mightiest warrior of Gielinor, has wished to help you scrawny humans be better warriors like Thok. To this end, he has convinced War and Death to help you out. From today until March 11th, you'll be able to find Thok hanging out in War's Retreat, and he has a bunch of buffs for you to enjoy. Continuing on, all the way from Daemon on, he has dragged the mighty metal cauldrons full of homemade overload potions. You'll find 2 of them near the portals near Thok himself. You can take a sip and get the effects of the Elder Overload boosts. Death has graciously agreed to waive all death costs during the events. Members will respawn at a nearby hub instead of Death's office. Tier 4 luck is active throughout the event. We have no idea how Thok managed this. Sign of life cooldowns will be reset upon entering a bank area, including the sign granted via the defense skill cape perk. Combat auras will immediately reset their cooldown when they end. You'll be able to choose your Soul Reaper task, and it will credit you double points. So if you have some rerolls, that'd be a good time to use them. Slayer Masters will offer you a choice between 2 tasks without paying your VIP tickets. And then we're moving on to the Ottoman Store refresh. Recently, they've been taking a look at the Ottoman Store function and assessing the engagement with all the players in the system. And they've gleaned at it, and they decided to put a new spin on the formula. Gone is the static store. They're introducing a rotating stock. They've also distilled the store into 2 available tabs. You get your consumables and your cosmetics. The consumables tab is broken down into 2 different sections. You have the static, which will be the first 3 spots. And will play host to your keys, lamps, and stars. They will not be rotating and will always be available. The other section, daily, will rotate every 24 hours. And you'll be able to contain or get useful items such as cinder cores, pulse cores, silver, hawk down, dwarven toolboxes, and so on. The prices for them have not been changed from the live game. And then in the cosmetic tab, will contain anywhere from 3 to 5 items that rotate weekly, updating on Wednesdays. This tab will contain cosmetic items from a variety of previous events and resources, including pets and outfits. Alright, and then after that, we have our treasure hunter calendar. What is up next? From March 5th till the March 6th, we have Genie's Wish. From March 7th to the March 14th, we have the Academy of Heroes. And then it looks like there's a little more information here. We have a schedule. The 7th and 8th of March, we have the Echo of Zamrock and Chaotic Overrides. 9th and 10th, we have the Echo of Arc Glacier and Azure Overrides. 11th through the 12th, we have the Echo of Corrosis and the Fungal Overrides. And the 13th, we have all of them. And you can kind of see here as they display all of this. Alright, we move on to the patch notes. This is going to be one of the bigger sections of today. So there are going to be parts that I might breeze through that you can view back on the homepage. But if I go over absolutely everything, this video is going to take forever. And I just want you guys to have the general information, and you guys can go back on the RuneScape homepage and look up specifics for each thing that you want there. Anyways, into the patch notes, we have the necromancy part. They reduce the rate at which moonstones appear in the Thalmon store. The drop rates of moonstones have been increased for the rituals. They have increased for ghostly implings, and now Thalmon sells impure essence in noted form. Quest refinement reinstated Betty's hand in the sand dialogue so she can sell you additional pink dye. They fixed an issue that caused Dolores gloves to make players' character head fully or partially invisible depending on the worn head armor or cosmetic override. Alright, now the big part, the combat update. Damage potential. Replace the hit to roll or roll to hit system with the damage potential system for melee range and magic combat against all NPCs. Removed a number of hidden buffs that increased your hit chance when using special attacks or ultimate abilities. Reduced the minimum hit chance required to damage an NPC under the new system from 25% to 1. Critical strikes. Modernize the critical strike system for melee ranged magic. Players now have a base critical strike chance of 10%. Players now have a base critical strike damage of 10%, increasing with levels up to 50% at level 90. Adjusted the damage of guaranteed critical strike abilities such as shadow tendrils and smoke tendrils to take in count for their extra guaranteed damage. Reduce the adrenaline gain from the critical strike buff from Meteor Strike, Incendiary Shot, and Tsunami to account for players' additional base critical strike chance from 10% to 8%. The damage hit cap is now went from 10,000 to 30,000. They removed and replaced several effects from items that affect hit cap and were affected by the hit caps as they're no longer relevant, like the Grimoire. Channeled abilities. Added a channel bar component to the top level interface to now display when using a channeled ability. Removed channel ability presence from the buff bar. Channeled abilities cast out of range will not cause the player to actually run in range and cast as expected. Fixed a number of issues with Revolution being slow to act after finishing a channeled ability. Action bar improvements. Action bar slots will now highlight briefly with a gold outline when interacted with. By default, action bar slots will now show cooldowns with a central timer. Global cooldowns no longer display the ability cooldown in text form to remove visual clutter. Remove the white flash that occurs at the end of the global cooldown rotation graphic. Action bar slots have no relation to global cooldown and will no longer display it unnecessarily. Action bar slots will no longer flash unnecessarily when swapping weapons after having been used in the current play session. Reduce the size of keybinds, and they kind of show the modifiers here. Alt-C has been changed to ATAC-C, and you can see Alt has been changed to A, Control has been changed to C, and Shift has been changed to S. Hit splats. Hit splats fade decay is 1.4 seconds to 1.2 seconds. The client cycles. Damage clarity. Removed all linked damage rolls such as Snapshot, Greater, Ricochet, and Snapshot. These abilities' damage will now interact as expected with various damage buffs. Remove damage per level granted by boosting melee, range, and magic stats. Note the potions will still boost accuracy and damage, however, it won't be done via two different systems, so all in one now. Ability damage ranges have been rebalanced to account for the loss of the damage per level. Removed skewed damage rolls from all abilities such as Dismember, Fragmentation Shot, and Combust. Alright, moving on to melee. Alright, for melee we have the core systems. Abilities now respect the true center of the NPCs, such as if you're using something that used to be like the SGB, that it's a 5x5 area. If the NPC is 3x3, it will actually still focus on the middle. They reworked ability priorities to reduce and remove the idea of hidden attacks where mechanics were not correctly synced up with their animation. Modified various hit timings to better match their visuals. Rewrote all melee abilities to be easier to adjust and work with. Channel abilities now allow movement while remaining within attack range of the target. They updated damage ranges. I'm just going to go over these kind of real quick, but Slice went from 95 to 105, Punish 75 to 85. Sever is 112.8 to 120. Barge and Greater Barge went from 75 to 85. Havoc went from 94.2 to 110. Decimate went from 111.8 to 120. Bladed Dive is 75 to 85. Kick and Backhand went from 60 to 70. Cleave is 112.8 to 120. Chaos War went from 75 to 95. Flurry went from 225.6 to 260. Greater Flurry went from 376.8 to 440. Assault went from 525.6 to 560. Destroy went from 451.2 to 520. Frenzy went from 610 to 730. Hurricane went from 265 to 285. Stomp and Forceful Backhand went from 120 to 130. Quake went from 131.4 to 145. The hit timings. Tuska's Wrath now hits 1 cycle faster. Quake hit splat is 1 cycle slower. Overpower is 1 hit splat cycle slower. Bladed Dive. Weapon is no longer hidden during the dive animation. For Fury, Fury hits once now and is no longer a channeled ability. And again, it went up in damage. The cooldown is 5.4 seconds to 15 seconds. Greater Fury increased the base damage to act as a greater variant of the Fury. It went from 105 to 130, and it increased critical strike chance on your next melee ability by 25% when you're within the 15 seconds is a guaranteed critical strike. It went from 5.4 seconds to 15 now. Sever, they reduced the time from 15 seconds to 5. The Shard and Sliver of Lang replaced the old special effect with the new set effect and passive effects of the Lang swords, both for the T85 and 95. For the Frost ones, the T85 attacks have a 5% to apply the Primordial Ice with each hit, and the T95s have a 10% chance. Adding new offhand passives, for the T85, attacks have a 1% chance to apply the Primordial Ice whenever stacking buff with each hit. Whenever you apply the Primordial Ice, stack gains Frost Blades for 6 seconds. Frost Blades attack deal an additional 24% of your ability damage stat on hit. Boundless Chill, you now have a 2% chance to apply the Primordial Ice, and then you get the same kind of benefits from the Frost Blades. And the new Icy Tempest, the T95 main hand now has access to the Icy Tempest special attack. It costs 30% adrenaline, reduced by 12% per stack of Primordial Ice. Hits primarily target for average of about 110. Hits all AoE targets around the player for an average of 165 damage, including your primary target. Consumes all of your Primordial Ice stacks when activated. Deals an additional 20% damage for enemies of each Primordial stack. Has a 15-second cooldown, and Primordial Ice stacks up to 10 times. Alright, now we have ranged. They updated the damage ranges. Again, just go through them real fast. Piercing shot 90 to 100. Snipe is 72 to 185. Ricochet is 60 to 70. Greater ricochet average at 30 to 35%. And 10 now to 12.5. A demoralizing blinding shot 60 to 70. Dazing shot and greater dazing shot is 94.2 to 105. Needle strike is 94.2 to 105. Snapshot went from 265 to 285. Tight bindings went from 120 to 130. Rapid fire went from 451.2 to 560. Bombardment went from 131 to 140. Unload is from 610 to 680. Deadshot went from 112.8 to 120. Salt in the Wound did the same thing and is now at 120. The Bow of Last Guardian, balanced by force and perfect equilibrium. The stored damage went from 42.5 down to 35%. The base damage, though, went from an average of 11% to 14%. Balanced by force, the special attack average damage went from 275 down to 245. Perfect equilibrium now stores damage before critical strike rolls. Buff icon changes. They increase the buff bar priority, so it falls closer to the front of the bar. Buff is no longer hidden at 0 stacks to prevent it from flicking on and off and being hidden. Buff is no longer redrawn when the player activates the special, preventing it from shifting positions. The special attack duration is now shown on a separate buff icon. The SGB average is 140 per shot. The initial shot always targets the center of your NPC that you're fighting. Subsequent shots will be within a 5x5 area around the center of that person. That means 5x5 enemies will now always be hit 5 times. Shadow Tendrils are now guaranteed to critically strike, and hit count used to be from 2 to 5 and is now straight 5. The Ruby Bolts, the Blood Forfeit, deal 20% of the damage with the hit cap changed. Increase the damage of the attack by 25 to 125 ability damage based on your target's current life. 6-second cooldown to 0-second cooldown. Deal 10% of your life points as recoil damage is now down to deals 5% of your life as recoil damage. 5% proc chance reduced to 1% for each 1 million HP your target has. So a total of now it has 5% proc chance. When arrows, the special ability is now called Icy Chill. Updated the base damage and increased for each icy precision stack. Threshold abilities from 2 to 3%. Ultimate abilities 3% remains unchanged, and special attacks it went from 0 to 3%. Alright, in the magic section, they updated damage range. Rack is 90 to 100. Rack and Rune is 180 to 200. Dragon Breath is 112.8 to 120. Chain and Greater Chain is 60 to 70. Shock and Impact is 60 to 70. Sonic Wave is 94.2 to 105. Greater Sonic Wave is 115 to 125. Greater Concentrated Blast went from 147.6 to 162. Greater Concentrated Blast is 160.2 to 168. Wild Magic went from 265 to 280. Horror or Deep Impact went from 120 to 130. Detonate went from 225 to 250. Asphyxiate went from 451.2 to 480. And Magma Tempest went from 96 to 220. And then we have special attacks now display their cooldowns and the target type in their tooltips updated and narrowed the damage ranges for most special attacks. And this is where I'm saying I'm not going to go into this full list. If you want this full list, you can go and search for your specific items in this list. There is a ton of them if you click this full list drop down, and I'll link it in the description. Moving on from that, we have the cooldown abilities. Surge, Dive, and Escape can be used during your global cooldown, no longer generate any adrenaline, and are now classified as abilities rather than basic abilities. Equilibrium, or in general, specifically the Equilibrium Aura, has been redesigned. It now increases the player's ability damage stat by 12%, but prevents the player from critically striking. The Equilibrium perk now increases your ability damage stat by 0.5% per rank. This will now apply at the base level, increasing damage over time, poison, and other effects, and has been renamed to Eruptive. The old name implies positive and negative, which no longer fits this new effect. And then, of course, here we have some PvP damage effectiveness. Not going to go over that part specifically. Alright, and here we have the miscellaneous changes and bug fixes. Updated magic animation priorities. Combat dummies updated the max hit mode to guarantee critical strikes. The combat dummy at War's Retreat will now correctly display the proper defend and flinch animation when hit. Vestments of Havoc have increased adrenaline, no longer works with non-melee styles. Fixed several issues with magic ability animation priorities. Revolution no longer delays the player after casting channel abilities such as Greater Concentrated Blast. Fixed an issue with Guthic's Blessing and Brief Respite. Invention perk where the mass was being incorrectly calculated. All targets affected by Greater Chain will now benefit from the additional hits granted by Rack and Rune's secondary combust extension buff. Auto attacks damage range 0 to 100% is now 20 to 100%. The mobile perk and Shadow's Grace no longer causes Barge or Greater Barge or Bladed Dive to generate half adrenaline. Blood Tendrils cleaned up how self damage was calculated. Hits added through the Sphere of Annihilation now get appended to the end of the ability instead of placing them in front of the double damage initial hit. Greater Barge and Regular Barge. Greater Barge no longer forces channel abilities to attack every 4 cycles and instead uses the same rate as the ability would naturally do. Now uses the correct barge animation rather than the kick animation. Berserk has been updated to be a multiplicative modifier as opposed to the previous additive modifier. Flurry now deals full damage in both single target and multi-target scenarios. Assault has the animation updated to better match the ability and hit timings. Magma Tempest target variant now applies an auto attack delay which casts to match standard ability cast. Rack and Rune combust extensions effect is now stack based, benefiting from the abilities such as Greater Chain that now cause it to hit multiple enemies. Metamorphosis has had its damage bonus increased from 62 to 66. Greater Dazing Shot, the hit chance debuff, now active for the full 4.2 seconds and is not cleared on attack. The hit chance debuff is now reapplied when the ability is used. Previously it won't work, which meant it could time out. As for quest bosses, it looks like they changed a bunch of them, and again, the list is pretty expansive, so I'm not going to go over a complete list of them, but you can check the description for the link to this week in RuneScape's update and find that information out. Alright, then of course we're coming to the end and we have the community showcase with some awesome art. Looks like someone made an awesome illustration here, and of course we have some more great art, and then we have the RuneTube where we have some great videos, and then we have some Scaper shots. And of course, we have the Pink Skirts event. We have the Mega Duck Hunt, which is going to be on the 8th at 1900 game time and 39. The Skill and Chill, which is going to be on the 4th at 3 o'clock game time and 1:16. And then we have some AOD. It looks like an AOD mass on the 8th at World 88. And then they have the Community Spotlight. We have the One Small Adventure. The adventure continues over on the official Discord. You can check out the server events and take part if you've been following the One Small Adventure. And it looks like this will bring us to the end of this week in RuneScape, at least for the 4th of March. I appreciate you guys sticking around, maybe playing this in the background to see what the new updates are. If you could like, comment, and subscribe, it helps this channel out amazingly, and it helps me get found by more people. And until next time, stay scaping.